Hello, everyone. My name is Ethan, and I want to share with you the story of my journey learning English. It's been a path full of challenges, discoveries, and many lessons along the way. I started learning English a few years ago, not knowing just how much it would impact my life. At first, it was a bit overwhelming, as English felt like an entirely new world with its own rules, sounds, and words that were so different from my native language. But I wasn't alone in this journey. From the very beginning, I had a special companion by my side, Catler. Catler isn't just a friend, but also a guide and motivator who has been with me through every step of my English learning experience. Whether I was struggling with pronunciation or trying to understand a difficult grammar rule, Catler was always there to help, encourage, and support me. Together, we've navigated the ups and downs of learning a new language, and I'm excited to share our story with you. When I first embarked on my English learning journey, I quickly realized that it was going to be much more difficult than I had anticipated. The excitement of starting something new soon gave way to a sense of frustration as I encountered challenge after challenge. One of the first hurdles was the overwhelming amount of grammar rules. In my native language, sentences seemed to flow naturally, but in English, I found myself constantly tripping over the rules of sentence structure, tenses, and word order. There were times when I spent hours trying to grasp the difference between simple past and present perfect, or how to use articles like a, an, and the correctly. But it still felt like I was getting nowhere. Vocabulary was another significant challenge. English has such a vast array of words, and many of them have multiple meanings depending on the context. I would often encounter a new word, look it up in the dictionary, and feel confident that I understood it, only to hear it used in a completely different way in a conversation or a movie. It was frustrating to realize that understanding a word's definition was only half the battle. Knowing how to use it correctly in a sentence was just as important, if not more so. I remember trying to use the word present in a conversation, thinking it meant gift in that context, but the person I was speaking to interpreted it as now or current. It was a small mistake, but it left me feeling embarrassed and hesitant to try new words. Pronunciation, too, was a constant source of anxiety. English is notorious for having words that are spelled similarly but pronounced completely differently, like though, thought, and through. I often found myself practicing in front of a mirror, trying to get my mouth to form the sounds correctly. But even after hours of practice, I would still stumble over words in conversation. There was one incident that stands out clearly in my memory. I was at a small gathering with some English-speaking friends, and I wanted to ask for a piece of cake, but when I tried to say cake, it came out sounding more like kick. Everyone laughed, and while I knew they weren't laughing at me in a mean-spirited way, it still stung. That day, I felt a wave of doubt about whether I could ever truly master this language. Despite these struggles, there were also moments of realization and growth. One such moment came during a particularly challenging grammar lesson. I had been struggling with the concept of conditional sentences for weeks, unable to wrap my head around how to use if clauses correctly. One evening, after a long day of practicing and failing, I decided to take a break and watch an English TV show. As I was watching, I noticed the characters using conditional sentences in their conversations. Suddenly, it clicked. Hearing the grammar used naturally in context helped me understand it in a way that no textbook ever could. I realized that learning English wasn't just about memorizing rules. It was about immersing myself in the language and learning to recognize patterns in everyday use. Another important lesson came from my experience with pronunciation. After the cake incident, I was determined to improve. Catler suggested that I try recording myself, speaking, and then playing it back to hear my mistakes. It was a bit uncomfortable at first, hearing my own voice and critiquing it, but it was also incredibly helpful. I started to notice the specific sounds that were tripping me up and focused on practicing those. Over time, my pronunciation improved, and I became more confident in speaking. The lesson I learned was that progress often comes from pushing through discomfort and facing my weaknesses head-on. Through these early struggles, I began to understand that learning English wasn't going to be a quick or easy process. It required patience, persistence, and a willingness to make mistakes and learn from them. It was also during this time that I truly began to appreciate the value of having a supportive companion like Catler. Whenever I felt like giving up, Catler would remind me of how far I had come and encourage me to keep going. We celebrated the small victories, like correctly using a difficult word or finally mastering a tricky pronunciation, and these moments of progress gave me the motivation to continue. Looking back, those early struggles were some of the most challenging yet formative experiences of my English learning journey. They taught me the importance of perseverance and the value of learning from my mistakes. And while there were many times when I felt frustrated or discouraged, I now see those moments as essential stepping stones that brought me closer to my goal of mastering English. As I continued my journey in learning English, it became clear that I needed to find new ways to improve. The traditional methods of rote memorization and repetitive grammar exercises were helpful to some extent, but they weren't enough to make the language come alive for me. I needed to immerse myself in English in a way that made it feel natural and enjoyable, rather than just another task to check off my daily to-do list. It was during this time that I began to explore different methods that truly transformed my learning experience. One of the first methods I discovered was watching English movies and TV shows. At first, I was hesitant, worried that I wouldn't understand anything and would just end up frustrated. But Catler encouraged me to give it a try. We started with movies that I was already familiar with in my native language, which made it easier to follow along. I would watch with English subtitles, pausing frequently to look up words or phrases I didn't understand. It was a slow process, but it was also incredibly rewarding. I found that by watching how native speakers used language in context, I was able to pick up on nuances of pronunciation, intonation, and even slang that I wouldn't have learned from a textbook. Over time, I started to recognize common expressions and could anticipate what characters would say next. Watching movies and shows became one of my favorite ways to learn, and it didn't even feel like studying. Reading books in English was another method that had a profound impact on my learning. Initially, I started with children's books, simple stories with basic vocabulary and straightforward sentences. This allowed me to build my confidence without getting overwhelmed. As I progressed, I moved on to more challenging books, often choosing ones that had been recommended by English-speaking friends. Each new book was like a journey into a different world, and with each page, I could feel my understanding of the language deepening. Reading also helped me expand my vocabulary significantly. Whenever I came across a word I didn't know, I would write it down in a notebook and make a point to use it in a sentence later. I was also able to see how grammar rules I had learned were applied in real contexts, which made them much easier to remember and use correctly in my own writing and speaking. But perhaps the most transformative method was practicing with native speakers. This was where Catler's support became invaluable. Catler, being a native English speaker, would often sit with me for hours, patiently listening as I stumbled through sentences, offering corrections, and explaining the finer points of the language that I couldn't grasp on my own. At first, I was nervous about speaking with native speakers, afraid that they would judge my mistakes, or that I wouldn't be able to keep up with the conversation. However, Catler created a safe and supportive environment, where I felt comfortable making errors and asking questions. We would have simple conversations about everyday topics, and slowly, my confidence began to grow. Speaking with Catler helped me to overcome my fear of making mistakes and allowed me to practice the language in a real-world context. It also gave me immediate feedback on my pronunciation, grammar, and word choice, which was incredibly helpful for my progress. In addition to these methods, I also discovered the power of language learning apps and online resources. With so many tools available at my fingertips, I was able to tailor my learning experience to suit my needs. I used apps that focused on vocabulary building, interactive grammar exercises, and even pronunciation practice. The flexibility of these resources allowed me to learn at my own pace and fit English practice into my daily routine, no matter how busy I was. Catler introduced me to some of these tools and even joined me in some of the app-based language challenges, turning learning into a fun, shared experience. We would compete to see who could earn the most points in a vocabulary quiz, or who could complete a grammar challenge the fastest. This added a layer of motivation and made the learning process feel less like work and more like a game. Another effective method I embraced was keeping a daily journal in English. This idea came from Catler, who suggested that writing regularly would not only help me improve my grammar and vocabulary, but also allow me to express my thoughts and emotions in English, making the language more personal and meaningful to me. At first, my journal entries were short and simple, just a few sentences about my day or something new I had learned. But as I became more comfortable, my entries grew longer and more complex. I began to write about my goals, my frustrations, and even my dreams for the future, all in English. This daily practice helped solidify my learning and gave me a tangible way to track my progress over time. I could look back at entries from months before and see how much I had improved, which was incredibly motivating. Throughout this phase of my journey, Catler was more than just a supporter. He was a partner in learning. Whenever I hit a roadblock, Catler was there to offer a new perspective or a helpful suggestion. He would listen to me read aloud from books, help me understand difficult passages, and even watch movies with me, pausing to discuss the language used by the characters. It was through these shared experiences that I realized how crucial it is to have someone who not only understands the language, but is also willing to invest time and energy in helping you learn it. Catler's patience and encouragement kept me going, even on the days when I felt like I wasn't making any progress. Looking back, this period of discovery was one of the most exciting parts of my English learning journey. It was a time when I began to see the language not just as a series of rules to be memorized, but as a living, breathing thing that could be explored and enjoyed. Each new method I tried opened up a new avenue of learning, and with Catler by my side, I felt empowered to keep pushing forward. These experiences taught me that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to learning a language. It's about finding what works for you, being open to trying new things, and most importantly, enjoying the process. With the right methods and support, what once seemed like an insurmountable challenge became an adventure, one that I continue to embark on every day. As with any journey worth taking, my path to learning English was not without its fair share of obstacles. There were moments when the challenges felt so overwhelming that I seriously considered giving up. The excitement of discovering new methods and making progress sometimes gave way to periods of self-doubt and frustration. It was during these times that I truly understood how difficult learning a new language could be. One of the most challenging obstacles I faced was the feeling of stagnation. Despite all the effort I was putting in, watching movies, reading books, practicing with Catler, and using language apps, there were days when it felt like I wasn't improving at all. I would listen to native speakers conversing effortlessly, and I still couldn't keep up. It was disheartening to put so much time and energy into learning, only to feel like I was stuck in the same place. I remember one particular week when everything seemed to go wrong. I mispronounced words that I thought I had mastered, mixed up basic grammar rules in a conversation, and struggled to recall vocabulary that I had previously learned. It was as if my brain had suddenly decided to forget everything. I began to wonder if I would ever truly become fluent, or if I was just wasting my time. In these low moments, I would often find myself thinking about quitting. Maybe English just wasn't for me. Maybe it was too late to learn something so complex. Maybe I should just stick to my native language and avoid the embarrassment of making mistakes in English. These thoughts weighed heavily on me, and I found it increasingly difficult to stay motivated. But just when I was on the verge of giving up, Catler would step in with words of encouragement. Catler had a way of knowing exactly when I needed a pep talk, and he never hesitated to remind me of how far I had come. He would sit me down and gently remind me that learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. Remember, Catler would say, it's not about how fast you reach the finish line, but about the progress you make along the way. He would point out the small victories I had achieved, like the time I successfully held a conversation with a native speaker at a coffee shop, or when I wrote my first full page of journaling in English without using a dictionary. These moments, which I had dismissed as insignificant, were proof that I was improving, even if it wasn't always noticeable to me. Catler also shared his own experiences with learning new skills, which made me realize that everyone goes through periods of self-doubt and frustration. He told me about the time he tried to learn a new musical instrument and felt like giving up after weeks of practice with little progress. But instead of quitting, he kept pushing forward, and eventually, things started to click. His story resonated with me, and I began to see my struggles as a natural part of the learning process rather than as signs of failure. With Cattler's support, I started to change my perspective. Instead of focusing on what I hadn't yet achieved, I began to celebrate the progress I had made, no matter how small. One of the most memorable turning points in my journey came during a conversation with Cattler. We were discussing a book I had recently finished in English, and for the first time, I found myself speaking without constantly second-guessing my words. The conversation flowed naturally, and I was able to express my thoughts and opinions with confidence. As we talked, I realized that I wasn't just repeating phrases or sentences I had memorized. I was actually thinking in English. It was a subtle shift, but it marked a significant improvement in my fluency. After that conversation, I began to notice other signs of progress. My listening skills improved, and I could understand English speakers more easily, even when they spoke quickly or used slang. My vocabulary expanded, and I found myself using new words and expressions without hesitation. Pronunciation, which had once been a major source of anxiety, became more natural as I practiced speaking with Cattler and other native speakers. For the first time, I felt a genuine sense of accomplishment. The language that had once felt foreign and intimidating was starting to feel like a part of me. Cattler continued to play a crucial role in keeping me motivated. He celebrated my successes with me, no matter how small they were, and reminded me that every step forward was a step closer to my goal. He also helped me set realistic expectations and goals, encouraging me to focus on progress rather than perfection. With his support, I developed a more positive and resilient mindset. I learned to embrace the challenges as opportunities for growth rather than as obstacles to overcome. One particularly powerful moment of realization came during a trip we took to an English-speaking country. For the first time, I was able to navigate conversations with strangers, ask for directions, and even make small talk with locals without feeling overwhelmed or self-conscious. It was a liberating experience that reinforced just how far I had come. The trip was a culmination of all the hard work and persistence, and it was during this time that I truly felt the rewards of my efforts. Looking back, I realized that the obstacles I faced were not just hurdles to overcome, but essential parts of my learning journey. They taught me resilience, patience, and the importance of perseverance. And through it all, Cattler was there, encouraging me, pushing me to keep going, and helping me see the progress I was making, even when I couldn't see it myself. Overcoming these obstacles was not just about mastering English, it was about learning to believe in myself and my ability to achieve something that once seemed impossible. And in the end, those moments of doubt and frustration became the very foundation of my success. As I continued my English learning journey, there were a few milestones that marked significant turning points, moments when I realized that all the hard work was beginning to pay off. Each milestone was like a small victory, bringing with it a new level of confidence and a deeper understanding of the language. The first major milestone came when I was able to hold a full conversation in English without feeling overwhelmed or tongue-tied. I remember it vividly, a casual chat with a native speaker I met at a local cafe. We talked about simple things at first, like the weather and our favorite books. But as the conversation progressed, I found myself discussing more complex topics, like the differences between our cultures and our views on current events. For the first time, I wasn't just nodding along or relying on basic phrases. I was actively participating, expressing my thoughts and opinions clearly and confidently. It was a surreal experience. After months of struggling with grammar rules, memorizing vocabulary, and practicing pronunciation, I was finally seeing the fruits of my labor. I left the cafe that day feeling an immense sense of accomplishment. I had crossed a threshold where English no longer felt like an obstacle, but a tool I could use to connect with others. Cattler was overjoyed when I told him about the conversation. He had been my sounding board for so long, patiently listening to my practice sessions, correcting my mistakes, and encouraging me to keep going. To celebrate this achievement, he took me out for a small celebration. We went to our favorite restaurant where we reminisced about the early days of my English learning journey, laughing at the mistakes I used to make and marveling at how far I had come. It was a moment of pure joy, shared with someone who had been by my side every step of the way. Another significant milestone came when I wrote my first story in English. Writing had always been something I enjoyed in my native language, but doing it in English was a different challenge altogether. I spent weeks working on the story, crafting the plot, developing the characters, and choosing the right words to convey the emotions I wanted to express. It was a labor of love, and when I finally finished, I felt a deep sense of pride. It wasn't perfect, of course. There were still some grammatical errors and awkward phrasing, but it was my own creation, written entirely in a language that had once felt foreign to me. When I shared the story with Cattler, he was incredibly supportive. He read it carefully, offering constructive feedback while also praising the progress I had made. To celebrate, he suggested that we publish the story on an online platform for English learners, so others could read it and perhaps be inspired by my journey. Seeing my work out there for others to read was a thrilling experience, and it reinforced the idea that English was no longer just something I was learning. It was becoming a part of who I was. One of the most memorable milestones was when I successfully completed an advanced English course and received a certification. The course had been challenging, pushing me to refine my skills and expand my knowledge of the language. There were times when I doubted whether I could keep up with the demands of the course, but Cattler was always there to encourage me. He would remind me of how much I had already achieved and how this course was just the next step in my journey. When I finally passed the final exam and received my certification, it felt like the culmination of everything I had worked for. Cattler was thrilled, and he organized a small gathering with our friends to celebrate. He even made a speech, highlighting my dedication and the progress I had made. It was a heartwarming moment, surrounded by people who had supported me along the way. The certification wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a symbol of the hard work, perseverance, and determination that had brought me to this point. Each of these milestones represented a significant step forward in my English learning journey. They weren't just about mastering the language. They were about building confidence, overcoming self-doubt, and realizing that I was capable of achieving something I once thought was impossible. And through it all, Cattler was there, celebrating every victory, no matter how small, and reminding me of how far I had come. These milestones weren't the end of my journey, but they were important markers along the way, showing me that I was on the right path and that with continued effort, I could achieve even more. Today, I can proudly say that my proficiency in English has reached a level I never imagined possible when I first started. While there's always more to learn, I'm now able to communicate fluently and confidently in a variety of settings. Whether I'm engaging in casual conversations with friends, giving presentations at work, or even writing creative pieces, I feel at ease expressing myself in English. The language that once felt so daunting has become a part of my daily life. Learning English has had a profound impact on both my personal and professional life. On a personal level, it has opened up new avenues for connection and understanding. I've made friends from different parts of the world, each bringing their own unique perspectives and experiences. These relationships have enriched my life in ways I couldn't have foreseen. Being able to communicate in English has also allowed me to immerse myself in diverse cultures through literature, films, and conversations. It's broadened my worldview and made me more empathetic and open-minded. Professionally, the benefits have been equally significant. Mastering English has not only improved my job prospects, but also allowed me to take on new roles and responsibilities. I've been able to participate in international projects, collaborate with colleagues from different countries, and even lead meetings in English. This has greatly enhanced my career, giving me opportunities I wouldn't have had otherwise. Recently, I was offered a promotion that requires frequent communication in English, something I would have shied away from in the past. This achievement is a direct result of the hard work I put into learning the language, and it's a testament to how much my efforts have paid off. Through all of this, Cattler has remained a constant source of support and encouragement. Even now, he continues to push me to refine my skills and keep challenging myself. We still practice together, often discussing complex topics or exploring new areas of vocabulary. Cattler is always introducing me to new resources, whether it's a book, a podcast, or an online course, that help me keep improving. He's also quick to remind me that language learning is a lifelong journey. There's always something new to learn, and that's part of what makes it so rewarding. One of the things I appreciate most about Cattler is his ability to keep me motivated. Whenever I feel like I've hit a plateau or start doubting my progress, he's there to remind me of how far I've come and how much more I can achieve. He celebrates my successes with the same enthusiasm as he did in the early days of my journey, and he's always encouraging me to set new goals. Whether it's mastering a new aspect of grammar, expanding my vocabulary, or perfecting my pronunciation, Cattler is always by my side, helping me strive for excellence. Recently, we've started working on more advanced English skills, like idiomatic expressions and cultural nuances. It's exciting to delve deeper into the language and understand it on a more sophisticated level. Cattler has also been instrumental in helping me refine my writing skills, offering feedback on my essays and creative pieces. His insights have been invaluable, helping me to craft more nuanced and effective communication. Looking back on my journey, I realize how much I owe to Cattler's unwavering support and encouragement. He has been more than just a mentor. He has been a true friend, always believing in my potential even when I doubted myself. Thanks to him, I've achieved a level of proficiency in English that has truly transformed my life. And with his continued support, I'm excited to see where this journey will take me next. The challenges I faced in learning English have made the accomplishments even sweeter, and I know that with Cattler by my side, the best is yet to come. Reflecting on my entire English learning journey, I can see how each step, every struggle, every breakthrough, and every milestone has shaped not just my language skills, but also who I am as a person. The path wasn't always easy. There were times when I felt overwhelmed, moments when I doubted whether I could really master this new language. But what kept me going was the belief that perseverance, practice, and the right support could make anything possible. And I was right. Perseverance was key. There were countless days when I had to push myself to study, to practice speaking, or to write another page. Progress was often slow, and at times it felt like I was barely moving forward. But I learned that persistence pays off. Every time I chose to keep going, I got a little bit closer to my goal. It wasn't about being perfect, it was about making consistent effort and trusting the process. And slowly but surely, those small efforts added up to big achievements. Practice, too, was essential. Language learning isn't something that happens overnight. It requires regular, dedicated practice. I found that the more I immersed myself in English, through conversations, reading, writing, and even thinking in the language, the more natural it became. It wasn't always easy, but with each practice session, I could feel myself growing more confident and capable. Practice turned what was once unfamiliar into something familiar, and eventually into something I could master. But perhaps the most important element of all was support. Without Cattler, I'm not sure I would have made it this far. His guidance, encouragement, and belief in me were the fuel that kept me going, especially during the tough times. He was there to celebrate the victories, no matter how small, and to pick me up when I was feeling down. Having someone like Cattler by my side made all the difference. It reminded me that learning a language isn't a solo journey. It's something that can be shared, and it's much richer and more rewarding when you have someone to share it with. To anyone who is currently learning English or thinking about starting, my message is simple. Stay motivated, keep practicing, and don't be afraid to seek out support. Whether it's a friend, a mentor, or a community of fellow learners, having someone who believes in you and encourages you can make all the difference. Remember that it's okay to struggle, and it's okay to take your time. Learning a language is a journey, not a race, and every step you take is a step forward. In conclusion, I'm filled with gratitude for the journey itself, for the lessons I've learned, and for the incredible support I've received along the way. Learning English has opened up so many doors for me, both personally and professionally. It has connected me with new people, enriched my life with new experiences, and given me the confidence to pursue opportunities I never would have considered before. But more than anything, it has taught me the value of perseverance, the power of practice, and the importance of having someone like Cattler in your corner. As I continue on this journey, I'm excited to see what the future holds. I know there will be more challenges, but I also know that with perseverance, practice, and support, I can overcome them. And I hope that my story can inspire others to keep going, to keep learning, and to never give up on their dreams. Thank you for being a part of this journey with me. I'm grateful for every step, every challenge, and every success, and I look forward to all that is yet to come.